What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they had a very interesting pre-draft visit yesterday that I think we got to dive into. A realistic option, possibly at pick number 20, plus one team insider feels there could be another trade in the works. This is a NFL draft move up to go get another offensive tackle year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What would it take? We'll dive into that plus a little bit more. And the slot corner position getting worse and worse by the day for the Pittsburgh Steelers. What options are left, and can they fill it this season successfully? We're going to dive into that, plus an interesting Pitt prospect that I think is on the board for this team as we approach the NFL draft. If you haven't heard, downtown Pittsburgh is flooded. Apparently it's snowing out, although it's not snowing here in East Liberty. How you feeling, my friend? You still above water down there?
Just barely.
Nice.
You know, I'm enjoying my weekend or my week here in the lost city of Atlantis. We are completely underwater, but in Southside we are still maintaining higher water levels. Though when I was going to the facility, the football facility yesterday, and earlier this week, it was crazy how high like the river goes. I've never seen it's like flooding some of those paths like along the south along the river in the south side. It was nuts. It was nuts seeing that. Like trees are like underwater. Tree trunks are underwater.
That's crazy. I don't know how it's going down, how it's happening. Acrisure Stadium is apparently a little bit flooded right now, dealing with some damage over there on the North Shore. I mean, crazy times. I didn't realize it rained that much. Like, I was like, oh man, it rained pretty aggressively, I guess, but this is Pittsburgh and it's April. I just thought that's just what happened. Hopefully everybody's good. Hopefully Acrisure Stadium's good. Hopefully
PNC Park is good. I think Pirates opener is supposed to be today.
It's today. That's true. For everybody going down there, man, wear a raincoat because you can't root on the Buccos if you're soaking wet. I guess you could, but it's a lot less fun.
Wouldn't be that much fun.
No, definitely not. Let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yesterday, they lost Avonte Maddox, potential slot corner option for them, to the Philadelphia Eagles. He re-signs with them for a 1-year deal. Thought that was like the last golden opportunity for the Pittsburgh Steelers to add a slot corner, a guy that could come in here with plenty of starting experience. Obviously, he's dealing with some injuries over the past couple of years, but if he could stay healthy, he's pretty good when he's on the field. And I mean, me and you both agreed if you could go in there with him as your option A and still have an option B, it's a pretty good spot for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He leaves at the same time the Steelers bring in Nate Wiggins, Clemson cornerback, for a pre-draft visit. Very interesting name, considering the Steelers have not brought in big-time corners for pre-draft visits yet this season. That completes the trifecta: NFL Combine meeting, pre-draft visit, and their pro day. Probably took him out to dinner, but who knows? You look at the slot corner option before we dive into Wiggins. Concerning for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Without Maddox, where do you go next?
Yeah, it is a little bit concerning. And I think, you can look at kind of the dwindling number of free agents, but I mean, you're down to basically like, you want Rock Ya-Sin, you want Justin Bethel, you want Eli Apple, like
Yikes.
Not a ton of appetizing options out there. And that's what leads me to kind of say, or leads me to believe that double dipping in the draft is where you go. I think a corner's got to be pretty high. I don't know. Maybe it's not as high as it was before you got Dante Jackson, but and it's a little risky just given that. I mean, you got limited picks, a lot of needs, like we've talked about all offseason, but I really think that they need to get a bona fide outside guy that they can feel confident in, and then later in the draft, maybe with one of those 7th round picks, you go for a slot guy, a guy who's maybe a little smaller. Maybe that's affecting his draft stock. Maybe there are a bunch of guys like that. In this draft to think about. It's not Dante Hardy. It's the other Penn State corner, quite honestly.
Caleb King.
Yeah, Caleb King is an option down there. There's, sorry, I'm blanking on the name real quick. Let me just pull it up. Deontay Prince from Ole Miss. I like him a lot too. So I think he's got some speed that could be really useful. There are, I feel like, a bunch of corners at the end of this draft that are going to go that could be your option there. It's real risky. I would have felt much more comfortable with the veteran, but I don't know. You kind of, if you're the Steelers, you kind of dragged your feet a little bit too long. And so if they wanted a veteran, I'm not sure there's one out there that's really going to make sense for them at this point, or that's going to be, that big of an upgrade over, whatever flyer you take on a 6th or 7th round rookie at this point, quite honestly.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Kalen King was a name that was interesting, but they just didn't show enough interest. And I think it's because, I don't know, for how small he is, and I mean, he is productive, but you kind of looked at him as undersized, definitely going to play in the slot in the NFL. I think his draft stock's a lot higher than the Steelers want it to be, and that's going to avoid them. Where is that? Is that second? Is that like, is it a deep pick for you? Like, is it like you got to go early, you got to go deep? Can you double dip early? Like, are you comfortable using a 4th round pick to get a second corner if you're the Steelers, knowing you got other needs?
Not really, because I think, if you're using a high pick on a corner, if you're using something before the 3rd round on a cornerback, you still got to go get, your center. I assume you're using your tackle. You're getting your tackle with your first round pick. So
yeah,
I don't know. Then you still got to go to get a receiver. And I feel like the receiver, like, I get it, slot corner. That's, it's a need. It's something that they got to address. I don't think it's a bigger need than wide receiver at this point. So, I think the Steelers have kind of painted themselves into a corner a bit here. Like, whatever option they get to play the slot is not going to be super exciting. Unless like, is it possible at all that Dante Jackson moves inside? Like, I'm not really sure about that. So, like, if you're using a 2nd or a 3rd on a corner, like, it would feel wrong to, like, just stick him in the slot. Like, that feels like a high enough pick that you should have confidence that he could be a starter on the outside. But then, you go any lower than that, and you've got no guarantees about any of these guys actually being able to start on the inside even. So it's just, they have painted themselves into such a corner, and I understand they had other needs to address in free agency, but this is just going to be one we look back at this offseason and we think, for as good as this offseason has been for the Steelers, the slot corner stuff, a little bit concerning. And just the way they've managed the whole cornerback position, to be quite honest, didn't see, like, they just, of all the positions that they've addressed and that they've, kind of put to sleep, this is not one that they did. This is probably their biggest remaining concern. I'd be quite honest with you.
Yeah, so I agree with the Dante Jackson thing. I'll start there. I got 2 names that are on the roster that I want to toss at you too, but let's start with Dante Jackson. I don't think Dante Jackson can move inside. I think that's my concern there, is everybody talks about, like, oh, just draft a guy and then they could either play the slot or Dante could play the slot. I mean, that's a whole other position that you got to learn this deep into your NFL career. That's tough to do. And, like, people are talking about that with Patrick Peterson. I think Patrick Peterson is smart enough to make a move anywhere on the field. I think that mentally he'd be just fine to do so. Not every corner is built like that. And I don't think that Dante Jackson's a guy that you want to draft, especially for the speed, and look at him and say, hey, look at this is a dude who we finally have some outside speed to keep up with Jamar Chase and Tyreek Hill and whoever else we got to play that has that dominating speed. But let's stick him on the inside to play almost nobody. I just don't think the Steelers are interested in doing that. And also, I don't think it's going to be a smooth transition, just because those are 2 totally different positions on the NFL field. And to ask somebody to do that and then replace them with a rookie that maybe you're not super confident in, I think it's easier to go the other way around, just because a lot of rookies at some point in their college career play some sort of slot corner. At some point they're there as a freshman or whatever. They're moving inside just to get some experience, and teams are just trying to get them on the field before they're that full-blown outside word dominant corner type of guy. Here's what I want to talk about next. Size matters. We all know it, and it's important to remember it in times of need. I recently went to a small law firm in hopes of getting the compensation I felt I deserved. I didn't, and to this day, I still think about the money that I may have missed out on. I filled out mounds of paperwork, then waited around for what felt like forever, got phone call after phone call telling me what I did not do right in the process, and it was expensive. All to get underwhelming compensation and almost zero satisfaction. Fortunately, If you ever get seriously injured and want to file a claim, you don't have to go through the same hassle I did. Instead, you can make it way easier by finding out if you have a claim in just a few clicks on your phone and working with America's biggest injury law firm with the promise of being for the people. Here comes Morgan & Morgan, today's sponsor. Morgan & Morgan has over 1,000 attorneys working in all 50 states fighting to get their clients the money they deserve. In recent months, they've achieved verdicts for their clients, including one that is worth $26 million. That is 40 times the highest insurance offer. And they're absolutely free unless you win. I got lowballed. Don't make the same mistake I did. Fighting big companies takes a big firm. And with America's biggest injury law firm, you're ready to take on insurance companies of any size. Don't overthink it. You can start your claim in just a few clicks by following the link in our description or by going to www.forthepeople.com/allsteelers. It only takes a few minutes to find out if you have a case. And if you have, it might be worth millions. Let me ask you about two names. I got two current people on the Steelers roster that I think might be an option for the Steelers when it comes to a slot, but I'm not totally sure I'm sold on either of them. I don't know if you're sold on either of them. The first one's Darius Rush. Obviously signed with them midseason last year. Didn't really do much. Stepped in when he really needed to, when the injuries were building up. Played safety and the slot. Has a ton of experience as a slot corner. I mean, maybe he's fourth, fifth round pick last year. And I think people looked at him and said, this guy's got some upside. I think the Steelers looked at him and said, hey, look at somehow we got this guy and we feel pretty good about what he could bring. The other name is Trenton Thompson, who played safety last year, definitely emerged. I don't know that he's got a role as a safety this season just because the Steelers added Deshaun Elliott. Thank you. And their room is going to be Minkah Fitzpatrick, DeMonte Kazee, Deshaun Elliott, and Miles Killebrew. There's your four safeties. They typically only keep four safeties. Last year was like a different situation because Elijah Riley was kind of like that mix and match, just defensive back that, I mean, maybe they go after again this year. Who knows? But this year, I think Trenton Thompson could kind of be that like mix guy. He has some experience playing nickel. I think he's physical enough to play nickel. I mean, are those two options that you think the Steelers would realistically consider?
At this point, it does seem like they're considering at least Darius Rush. I mean, Rush is the one I think. I mean, obviously, because he actually plays corner, I'd be a little bit, more sure of. Thompson, I really like Trenton Thompson. Like, he played pretty well when he stepped in last year to kind of fill the gap at safety. But I always thought of him as more of like a physical, a run stopper, a guy who can come down and make plays in the box as opposed to a cover guy. That's why I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with Rush out there, and I love the talent that Rush has. Like, he's clearly got some. It's just a wonder why. I mean, so many holes at corner last year. Like, why Darius Rush could never even. I mean, he barely even got a helmet on game days. Like, it was tough to even get him into the mix. So I'm just curious about that. He seems like a project, and if he didn't really get any NFL experience last year, like, how's he better than last year? I guess is my question. I'm not counting him out at all. I mean, right now he might be their best option, quite honestly. But it's iffy. I'm optimistic about Rush though. I think like he could end up being a contributor at some point during his NFL career, whether it's right now. I mean, just either way, you're throwing one of these guys into the fire when they haven't done this.
They should not be in the fire. Yeah.
Right. Like, this is and I don't know. I don't want to get completely I don't want to blow the slot corner option completely out of proportion, but it's a pretty glaring hole, and they don't.
I was going to say it's a pretty significant. Like, it's a need that like you've brought up for years now when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's like they need a slot corner, and they just always seem to. I mean, when they had Mike Hilton, even what Mike Hilton was doing at times, people were not satisfied with. They were like, this guy can't cover well enough. You need somebody who could cover better. You're getting blown up. I mean, in the NFL today, like, your slot guy is. I mean, he does so much, and the Steelers, they face teams who have dominant slot guys. Like, Amari Cooper can move inside to the slot. Jamar Chase can move inside to the slot. Tyler Boyd was a slot guy for a long time. You went to Buffalo, you had to face Stephon Diggs, and the Steelers are talking about Joey Porter Jr. moving in and following him all season or all game long. Like Devontae Adams could play the slot super well. Like you're gonna face guys that are just really, really good slot wide receivers. You need to have a good slot corner, and they just don't. They don't have any. Let me ask this: would you rather bring Patrick Peterson back, because that seems to be like the name that everybody's talking about, or maybe like bring back Chandon Sullivan over giving a Darius Rush or a Trenton Thompson, or maybe even like a DeMonte KZ, because DeMonte KZ's got plenty of experience playing nickel, a shot being the guy on the inside?
I'm not really interested in bringing Patrick Peterson back. Like, I think that, I don't know, that relationship kind of played its course. Like, he did his job last year, and
Yeah.
I would look somewhere different this year. KZ, sure, but that just, I don't know. I don't think you need to, like, I don't know, just using a retread and like trying to use a stopgap, solution for this. Like, that's why I like Rush, like because I feel like that could be a semi long term solution there if it works out. Like
Yeah.
if I'm doing this, if I'm looking for a solution, I would rather go young. I would rather go with someone who has some upside, could eventually maybe play some outside. Like, I don't know. I don't want to try to fit a guy like a KZ or even a Patrick Peterson, like a guy who hasn't done this before, into this spot. I would rather find someone young, find someone who's maybe closer to, just like time wise, closer to having some experience there. And I don't know, just like has some upside. Like I don't know. I don't think this defense needs to just like put a 30-year-old band-aid on this problem. Like I think you need to go a little younger. I think you need to look for a little bit higher upside than just, well, this guy won't embarrass us, you know? Like, I
Yeah.
think we can aim a little bit higher than that.
Yeah, I agree. To talk about Nate Wiggins, because I think that's the next step in finding a slot corner, is the NFL draft. If you're not going to find one in free agency, and you're, I mean, potentially going to give an option to, but they're going to bring in competition either way. Like, there's no way they're going to walk into training camp and say, all right, Darius Rush, that's our slot guy. That's it. We made the decision. That was it. That's our guy. There's no chance that they're going to do that. And you look at the NFL draft. I mean, they brought in Nate Wiggins for a pre-draft visit. He's an outside guy. I said this earlier. I think it's really difficult to move Dante Jackson on to the inside. I think it'd be just as difficult and also as concerning to move Nate Wiggins to the inside. I get it. That's great. But like, it's also essentially a stopgap. Like, hey, this is cool. And then you got to find an outside guy, or you're going to turn Nate Wiggins into both. And I don't know. I think that has repercussions that you just don't want to deal with if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do you view Nate Wiggins as an option for them at this point in the NFL draft? Is he a guy? And then from there, we'll take it into, I got some names when it comes to possible slot corners in the draft that I think they could land. Maybe I'll toss out a couple of those and see if we'd rather him over Nate Wiggins.
Yeah, it's just Wiggins, like you said, like Wiggins at slot for the Steelers isn't, you don't expect that to be a long-term thing. Like, it's a stopgap. It's one,
Yep.
maybe 2 years. And just that just makes me uncomfortable. Like, why
Yeah.
would we use a premium pick, our first round pick, on a guy who's not even going to play the position we want him to play for more than a couple of years? That doesn't really make sense to me. I also think there are going to be better corners available for them at 20 than Nate Wiggins. Like, Kool-Aid and Cooper DeJean could still be there. Like, and we're going to go with Nate Wiggins. I don't know. They're just, like, I don't think Nate Wiggins is bad, but I think I've kind of cooled on Nate Wiggins a little bit from earlier in draft season, and I think that you can do a little bit better than a guy like, I mean, you could even like wait until the second round, I feel like, and get not a better option than Nate Wiggins, but I feel like you could get someone with a little bit, I don't know, some higher value, like some higher like value at that slot. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree.
Kamari Lassiter could fall down there. Rakestraw from Missouri. Like, I don't know. Wiggins not really. I don't know. It's kind of weird to me that they even brought him in for a visit. To be quite honest, I guess not that weird.
Yeah, of all the corners, I agree. I think I think that's the guy that doesn't make almost any sense for the Steelers. Like, he does the speed thing. He's got the speed thing that they're in need of, but that's what they signed Dante Jackson to do. Like,
Right.
I don't know. There's just Quinion Mitchell is a stud, and he's thick, and he's a physical corner, and I think the Steelers would love him. Cooper DeJean is a physical guy. I would imagine that they go and watch his, I don't know, pre-draft workout thing that he's holding at Iowa in a couple of days. I mean, Kool-Aid's just a Steelers corner. Terrion Arnold's a Steelers corner. Nate Wiggins is not a Steelers corner. He is small. He just doesn't fit the physical style of defense that the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, you could even say like, oh, they're looking for speed. They need speed. I get it, but everything that they've done is not speed. I mean, Patrick Queen is fast, but he'll hit you. Deshaun Elliott, he's a bruiser. Like, I don't know. I think that there are other options.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, like they got speed with Dante Jackson. Like if you were going to
Yeah, why
draft
do you
Nate
need
Wiggins, right? Like you did the speed thing, and like,
Yeah.
you can just get you can get so much better value going a couple different ways at pick number 20, because that's where Nate Wiggins, like that's where it's going to go. Like if you're not picking him at 20, you're not picking him at all. So there are just so many better things that I think that I would rather use that pick on.
100%. All right, so let me toss out some names. Kalen King's one. I don't think that he's going to end up in Pittsburgh just because, I don't know, I'm not totally sold on him. Kyrie Jackson, Oregon corner, safety, slot guy, pretty much all over the board. You know, he's a 6'4", 200-pound dude. He's played pretty much everywhere. Let me toss that name out there, and then let me toss another one out there. Josh Newton out of TCU, excuse me. Guy, 5'11", 190 pounds, could play. I mean, he's played both the inside and the outside. I would imagine he's more inside than he is outside in the NFL. I mean, either one of those names. I think both of them are potential third-round picks, depending on where it goes. Would you be comfortable with the Steelers waiting on a corner until then, taking one of those guys, and is that like good enough to say like, hey, okay, look, they drafted a corner?
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly like I think I'm pretty in on them waiting a little bit long. I mean, these guys are. I mean, Newton's pretty like he's a mid round like day 2 guy. It seems like kind of on the edge of day 2, day 3. Jackson from Oregon's like seems pretty solidly day 3. Like I think that you do wait that long, kind of. I think ideally you are waiting that long. Like I said, you could double dip and like go real early and grab a Kool-Aid or whoever, or a Cooper DeJean in the first round. But then I think you got to wait real long to like, you have to wait until the 6th or 7th to make it worth your while picking again at corner. If you're just picking one, like I think this is the kind of range, the 3rd or 4th or 5th round is where you should kind of spring for your guy. So I feel like I'm partial to Jackson just because the physical traits are a little bit better. Newton's got the production on his side, but I don't know. I'm going to go with the better athlete, I feel like, in this situation.
Dude, Jackson's a stud. He's 6'4". I mean, he I think his draft stock would have been a lot higher with better production, but 6'4", 190 plus pounds, that's a monster of a man. Like that guy, especially playing corner, like he, you know what I mean? You get like he's not a Jalen Ramsey, but he's got the physique of a Jalen Ramsey, where you're just like, that guy's massive.
Yeah, and just like some of those guys that you mentioned that can play the slot and play outside, like Devontae Adams or Jamar Chase, like those guys have some weight on them too. Like they're not just fast, and like if you can move Jackson around, have him like cover a tight end who's splitting out occasionally or something like that, like that's pretty useful as well. So I feel like Jackson brings them a little bit more versatility. Is not like slow or anything. I feel like Jackson is kind of the better fit of those two, and I like and he also seems like oddly enough he's like rated a lot lower than Newton would be. Like Newton it seems like he's projected to go a little bit earlier than Jackson is.
Yeah, I think Jackson's just like the lack of productivity in Oregon's defense is just kind of like throwing people off. But Ike Taylor said that dude's got a ton of promise, and I mean, Ike Taylor's a scout in Pittsburgh somewhere. I don't know how long it's been, but I know he's there, and I know he's got a hand in some things. And if he likes him, I think that he's on their radar. So we'll see what happens. But I agree. I think Jackson would be a stud. I like Newton too. I think Newton would be a stud. I think any of those guys that are going to fall like in that 3rd to 4th round category to play the slot to come in here, I think it's a good year for those guys. And if you're the Steelers, that's probably your best bet. And then you could compete them with Darius Rush and Trenton Thompson and Devontae KZ and just have picks. And I think that works out a lot better for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's flip it to the other side of the field. The Steelers are looking at offensive tackles. Obviously, we've talked about every name in the book. Ray Fittipaldo of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette said that he would not be surprised if the Steelers made a trade in a second year to go up and get their right tackle, left tackle of the future. He said that Oregon State's Talise, I'm going to say this name wrong, Talise Fuaga could be the name to watch. He said, quote, Fuaga's name is really intriguing to me. You see him a lot around the fringe of the top 10, so we might be looking at another trade-up scenario if they want to go get him. They brought him in for a pre-draft visit. They sent Pat Meyer to his pro day. I mean, this dude's supposed to be really, really good. He's versatile, could probably play both sides of the line. Do you see another trade-up coming for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I don't know if I necessarily see it coming, just because there will be tackle options later where they are right now. So it's kind of like, why give up? Like, Fuaga better be a superstar if you're going to move up. That said, though, I was going to say, I can't rule it out.
He might be a superstar.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, if he is a superstar, then I'm all for it. It's just, you got to know what you're doing. Like, you have to be 100% certain that this guy can. Like, I would expect him to start day one, honestly, if you're trading up that much, because you're going to have to trade up pretty. I mean, last year, how many spots they move up? Three to get Broderick. You're moving up twice as many, probably more. This is closer to like 6 or 7 or 8 picks to get all the way up to the edge of the top 10. So you're going to be giving up. So what they give up last year was a 4th round to move up.
4th round pick. It was just their 1st and a 4th. Pick 120.
Like, not bad, but they have I keep forgetting which round do they not pick in? Is it the 5th or the 4th?
The 5th. So they still have a 4th, and they got 2/3.
Oh, I'm not giving up I don't know if I'm giving up a 3rd to move up.
Do you think you'd have to give up? What do you think you'd have to give up to move up 6 spots to go to, like, let's say 13? Well, actually, let's start there. What's the line? Like, where do you think you'd move? If you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, where is it like, all right, now we'll move up?
Well, I mean, like, Fuaga could go as early as 10 to the Jets, I feel like. If you want to be really safe about it, because, like, what do you do if you trade up and I guess you can maybe go get Fashanu from Penn State, but that doesn't seem
which is not a bad move.
Right, but it's a gamble, I feel like. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I don't think the Vikings are going to trade out at 11. I don't think the Broncos can afford. I mean, maybe if you're the Broncos, you just want to stockpile some picks. Maybe you could trade out of 12. But even then, I feel like you're taking a big risk.
If he's there, are you moving up? Like, let's say hypothetically he's fallen. Steelers don't make a move until that pick is up and they know they're going to get him. At what pick do you think it's like, okay, we're done waiting, that's where we're going to go? That's when we're going.
I don't think you can wait past 12, to be quite honest.
Okay.
So you're trading with the Broncos. Maybe they would take
picks.
What?
The 8 picks.
Yes. So I feel like the Broncos would ask for a 3rd, just given where they are. They're like, we need every single draft pick that we can possibly have. And they're going to want the highest one that they could possibly get. I would be uncomfortable trading a 3rd to get up that high, but I guess it's not the worst idea in the world, especially because you got 2 of them. And if you're getting a superstar, like, this is all just predicated on the idea that Fuaga's starting, he's a superstar, he's there for 3-4 years, and he's doing his thing there. So, and if your fallback plan is Fashanu, that might work. That might work. I still feel uneasy about it just because, like, damn, they got it. Like, okay, you get your tackle, and then where do you go from that? Like, you need your center, you need your receiver, you need your corner, like, and if you're just thinning out your draft pick pool, there's going to be some hole on this roster that I feel like is more glaring than your tackle spot, and that's the only thing that concerns me about it.
So I agree. I'm not big on trading up. I think that the options at 20 are going to be there. Like I just don't, Armarius Mims, I think is going to be there. JC Latham, I think is going to be there. The dude from Washington, I think is going to be there. I think it's a matter of whether or not they believe like that's their guy. I'm not totally sold on them not moving up. And I don't know, like a third round pick would be tough, but I still think if you moved up in the first and got a tackle, you came back in the second, that's where it eliminates for me. Like that's what it does. It's not necessarily you're going to leave a hole on your offense or on your team. It's more you're going to miss out. You have less options in the second round to get a center, because if they trade up in the first round, you're not going to trade up in the second round, which means that you're going offensive tackle, and then you're not totally sold on when you're going to get a center or if a center is going to be available at pick 51. So if a center's not there at pick 51, what are you doing? Like, you've just given yourself, you've just removed the center option from your draft board. I think that becomes more dangerous. I don't think an offensive tackle is worth moving up for in this draft. Like, I think they're very top heavy, and I think that if they're all going, like if you're down to, if there's one left and you're 3 picks away, then make the move and go get Armarius Mims and give up nothing for him. But to go up 8 spots to get a guy, like, I don't know, maybe it's just the Devin Bush thing, floating around in my head, just being like, that was a terrible move and I can't believe that they did that. And
You have PTSD
maybe
from it.
a little PTSD. Yeah, but I'm not totally sold that I'm moving up for an offensive tackle. I do want to ask about a pit tackle. Matt Goncalves is a dude who took a local visit to Pittsburgh, met with them at the combine, has some traction when it comes to being like a mid-round pick in the NFL. I mean, what's the upside of this guy? You've covered him for a couple of years now. Is he a starter in the NFL? How long until he's a starter in the NFL? Is he a right tackle, left tackle? Can he be versatile? What's the outlook on this guy?
Yeah, I think Matt could be a decent fit for the Steelers for a couple reasons. One is the versatility. He can play both sides of the line. So if you're thinking about making that transition for Broderick, this is an option to kind of help that get sped along. I also think that he's a pretty good run blocker. Like that's where he's more advanced at this point, which, you know, I think he's decently starter ready. Like I think he could, maybe not week 1, but you could throw him in there pretty soon after the season starts and feel pretty comfortable. The only thing I think that's concerning is that he hasn't played football by the time you get to September, he won't have played football in over a year.
Yeah.
And, he's only played 3 games within the past 2 years, or a year and a half. So that's a little concerning is just how rusty is he. He needs some preseason games to get up to speed and maybe even a little bit of regular season action. I think the comforting thing is that, he's a really good run blocker. I think that's the thing. Like you have a solid foundation there. The athleticism is a bit of a question just in terms of, how well will he be able to pass block right away? So we'll see. I mean, maybe getting healthy from that toe injury that he had will help him move a little bit better. His testing numbers at Pro Day weren't crazy, but he also told us that he was at only about 80-85%. So still got some recovery to do. I feel like during that visit, the Steelers were kind of talking. That was probably a lot of the conversation was, how healthy are you? How healthy can we get you?
Yeah.
Where will you be by the time the season starts? So I think he could step in and be a starter right away. Is he an all pro right away? No. He's going to be pretty limited and there are going to be some growing pains, but I think the kind of short-term upside of it could be pretty good for the Steelers, especially if you're getting him in the 4th round or something like that.
Is that where you see him going in the 4th round? And where would he go if he was healthy? Like if he, if he never had to deal with the injuries? If
he was healthy and played a full season, I mean, I don't know how Pitt's record this year. I mean, he probably would have helped them win, 4 or 5 games instead of 3. But I think he would have put on some pretty good tape, and I think he could have climbed to as high as the 2nd maybe. But I think I've seen him. He was comfortably in the 3rd round of mock drafts I saw basically all season, despite not playing at all. And it doesn't seem like his draft stock has dropped at all really since the season ended. I still think that teams are going to meet with him. They're going to see those pro day numbers, and he's going to drop maybe to the 4th. I think that's more likely, but I'd say late 3rd, early fourth. That's where I'd probably guess that he'd go at this point.
Yeah, I look at guys like that and I just say like there's potential there, and if the Steelers want options, like that's what I think everybody's sold on, like a first round tackle, 99% that they're going to go first round offensive tackle. That's the only way that they're going to replace Dan Moore. I think you got a year to replace Dan Moore if the Steelers really want to, and a guy like Matt could come in here and just kind of learn and grow and be a replacement for right now, just kind of like Chooks, and him and Spencer Anderson can grow together, and you kind of see what you got in both of those guys, and maybe one works out. I think that that's not an unrealistic possibility for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think if the first round doesn't go the way that they want it to and they have to make a decision, or if it does go the way that they want to and they end up with like, oh, Cooper DeJean and Quinion Mitchell are still on the board, there's no chance they're going with an offensive. Like, I would be stunned if both of those names were up there at pick number 20 and the Steelers win offensive tackle. There's just no chance they're going to pass either of those guys up. At that point, I could see them saying like, all right, look, we're going to wait it out on, because that's the thing is like the second round and beyond offensive tackles, there's a pretty significant dip from those first round offensive tackles. So I don't think that you're getting guys that are like, okay, like, you know, this is definitely going to be a starter. I think you're getting guys that are like, we hope this guy's a starter in a year. And I think that's where Matt could come into play. And I think the Steelers could consider those options if they're there. I think that's a more likely situation than the Steelers moving up 8 spots to go get Fuaga and saying, like, we're going to give up a lot to go get a tackle. Like, I just don't think they're going to limit themselves like that. I really don't. I think in the second round, they might make a move. Not, first round, unless it's like a really small move, it would surprise me.
Yeah, and I feel like it's very Steelers to say, to be a little bit less aggressive, early, like in that first round, and say, well, we've got options. We've got things that we're at least comfortable with. Like, we don't feel we need to take the big swing just to, I don't know, just to find a superstar right now. Like, we can fill some of the other gaps with a pick with at a better slot value, I guess I would say, than trying to take this big home run swing and maybe getting a superstar, but maybe not, and giving up some draft capital and leaving the rest of our roster or some other parts of our roster vulnerable in the process.
Yep, I agree. I don't think it's a move for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it's going to be on their radar. And the more that they look into this kid, I don't know. But I would watch Goncalves. I would say, that's a name that would be on my radar moving forward if I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, just because you never know when he's next door and the Steelers got plenty to look at him the last couple of years. With that said, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcast. And as we've been saying, go subscribe to our new YouTube channel, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk clips for even more All Steelers Talk. We will be back on Monday. If you're going to the Pirates game, stay dry. Enjoy another rainy but beautiful weekend in the Berg. Peace.